Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Bringing BI to Life, How Resorts Are Building a Culture of Data-Driven Decisions. My name is Jason Freed. I'm the Hospitality Data Evangelist at Hotelier, and in a few moments, I'll be joined by Scott Campbell, Director of Revenue Management at Hammock Beach Golf Resort and Spa, and Mark Fry, Resorts Extraordinaire at Hotelier. A couple quick housekeeping notes. The audio is on mute for all attendees, but please feel free to ask questions during the presentation in the chat box below. Scott, Mark, and I will respond after the webinar via email with any guidance we can provide on your questions. Also, this session is being recorded, and tomorrow we'll send an email to all the registrants with a link to the video and slides. So again, my name is Jason Freed, and I handle content and communications and creative here at Hotelier. I've been learning and writing about some of the most innovative hotel companies and hotel technology solutions for about 20 years now. Super excited to be here and excited to chat with Mark and Scott. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you quickly. Can you do a brief introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. My name is Mark Fry, the Resorts Extraordinaire at Hotelier. I've been with the company about 21 years, and I've been in the hospitality industry about 38 years. Been around the world once or twice, 6 continents and 48 states and 42 countries. So yeah, I feel like I understand the resorts community quite well. And Scott and I have known each other for probably 15, 20 years. I don't know what the number is, but quite a few years. And so it's a pleasure to turn it over to Scott for his introduction.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure being here with you all. Again, Mark and I go way back. I've here been at Hammock Beach for coming up on about 7 years. Been with the company this time around for almost 11, but worked at a sister property going way back to 2008. So I'm very familiar with the product and everything else, and been in the industry now for 25 years. And just kind of the same as Mark, not quite the world traveler Tim, but do love traveling and love doing what I do. And to kind of further my role here at Hammock Beach, I actually became Director of Revenue Management on January 1st of 2020. And let's just say that first year was quite the year to get started into revenue management and hospitality, especially luxury golf resorts.
Tell us a little bit about Hammock Beach, Scott. How many rooms? What kind of services do you offer there? First of all, where are you located?
Of course, we're a 275-room luxury golf and spa resort located right on the Atlantic coast, between Daytona Beach and St. Augustine, so Northeast Florida. Mix of our products here. We have a 20-room boutique hotel that's directly on the ocean front, and then we've got single-family homes and condos ranging from 1 bedroom all the way up to 11 bedrooms. So a wide range of everything spread out over quite a large span on the resort.
Mark, let me guess, you've been there?
A few times, yes, sir.
That's cool. So what's your team look like, Scott? So you've got the couple different outlets there and even, various sort of room types across the property. Do you oversee all of that? Do you have a team that you work with?
Yeah, so I directly oversee our reservations team. I've got a team of about 11 here on property. Because of the size of the resort, like you mentioned, we've got 9 pools, about a dozen restaurants, a little bit of everything. We've got a total of 600 service professionals that here working at the resort. The other thing that's kind of unique about us is because we aren't just a resort, we are a lifestyle community too. So we do have people that live here full time. So we have a whole membership component that we'll get into in a little bit as well.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about the business mix and sort of how you're measuring that.
Yeah, so on property, we are about a 60% leisure house, 40% group. It's definitely shifted. It used to be more about 70 leisure and 30 group. But over time, group has obviously been a heavy importance as leisure has kind of softened in the market. But with the membership side, so all of our units, minus our 20-room boutique hotel, they're all individually owned. So what that means is there is an individual owner that has all of these. So we do have to do a revenue split. So that makes my job a little more unique, that we can't run the place like a true hotel. We're limited on how many comps we can do. There's a lot more that comes into the whole revenue management side when we look at the membership component throughout everything, because we do have members that live here full time, along with those that just have their unit in the rental program.
And if I might follow up on that, Scott, you also have to manage when the unit is given to you to rent out, the owner can still come and stay in those units as well for a set amount of time per year, I would imagine, right?
Correct. So unlike a timeshare, a traditional timeshare where people buy specific weeks. These people own the unit outright. It's their unit. There's really no restrictions as far as when and how long they can come. They're really only guaranteed their availability if they book a year out. Within that, it's all based upon availability. But, you've got owners that will never come and stay, and we've got owners that will come and stay for months at a time.
Right. And everything in between. And with that group component that you're talking about, do you find that you're displacing the transient guests because of the group components?
We try not to, as we look at everything and use the tools that we have available. Obviously, using displacement analysis, making sure that we're not offsetting when we can have stuff in here. It may be time where we have a heavy golf group that's going to have a lot of ancillary spend. Usually a little bit of a higher room rate, or if we get a nice corporate group. Again, we've got to look holistically at everything and see if it makes sense so that we're not doing any kind of displacing.
Scott, you mentioned briefly the industry outlook and demand softening a little bit. I know you just came back from the data conference a couple weeks ago. I'm curious what the forecast looks like for Hammock Beach for the remainder of the year and early into next year.
Yeah, we definitely, we had a huge revenge travel spike right after 21, 22, even 23 were some of the best years that the resort's ever seen. We're still in the grand scheme of things, I think we're doing extremely well when we compare ourselves to our comp set. But yeah, it's definitely softened. I go back to the hotel data conference from last year, and they kind of pointed out Florida specifically was one of the first times I've ever heard them kind of pinpoint a specific state. But not only did they talk about Florida, but they also said resorts and beach locations are going to be what's hurting the most. And unfortunately, I'm 3 for 3 when it comes to that. So it made our kind of our whole outlook. We had to be a little more aggressive and see what made sense, so we kind of bucked those trends. And this year's kind of been the same. It's definitely a softer summer when we look at how it's been historically. But as we look at our star reports and how we're doing in our comp set, definitely have no complaints when we look at those. The traveler has definitely changed over the years too, and it's now very much an experiential kind of travel, and having the golf courses, having the spa, having the beach, having state parks that are nearby for hiking and being outdoors, going on intracoastal. There's so much to do outdoors, which definitely helped us during the pandemic because people were able to get out and spread around, but that's definitely carried through even to this day where there's so many different experiences that we offer that it provides for a wide range of guests coming.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's what the data is showing too, really is like the bifurcation in the market, right? Where some of these upper upscale luxury resorts like yourself that can go after experiential travelers are still performing well. So how have you sort of responded to that demand softening, Scott, by going out and targeting new segments of business? Were you reliant on international business at any point? Did you have to sort of shift that to a more local appeal, or are you going like sort of golf first, or how some of those strategies?
Sure. We've never really been big on international, even being here in kind of the world golf capital of the world. International's never really been huge for us, even with having Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, and Orlando all within an hour and a half drive at most to those airports. For whatever reason, it's just never been a big international destination for us here. So we've really relied heavily on the drive-in market when we look at everything. And softening, it's changed dramatically. And it's been where in the past we were looking at booking windows being 2 months out, where now it's, what does the weather look like this weekend, and do we want to go somewhere? So it's definitely a completely different traveler when we look at, how they're booking and when they're booking.
So you've got all the different components, back to the different components of the property, right? So you've got all the different room outlets, you've got golf, you've got a spa, you've got, food and beverage, which requires a POS. All these departments have systems underneath them that you've got to connect together. How have you sort of built that underlying technology framework at Hammock Beach to sort of bring all of those different components together? Or I think before we started this call, you mentioned that you're sort of still working on some of those components. Can you shed a little bit of light on to how that process is going?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, with the complexity of the resort, it's kind of unique of what we have available to us and what works. Our property management system, along with our point of sale, we have to have something that integrates between the two. Being a cashless resort, they need to be able to charge to the room, be able to go to all the outlets, do everything else. So it makes our tech deck a little more challenging. but it's something that we've worked through, and we've got some great partners that we are using. And they even are doing a lot of changes within theirs as far as upgrades and updates and what all they communicate with and how they're growing their portfolio. That is also going to help us in the future too.
And
So
with
in
that,
your role, go ahead, Mark.
sorry, I'm going to hit on that just for a second. With that, you said cashless. You're also a private club, so you have to be staying there to be able to consume unless you're a member, to be able to consume the amenities at the resort, correct?
Correct. Everything is completely private with the exception of our Atlantic Grill. It's our oceanfront restaurant is the only public venue that we've got here.
Okay.
But everything else, as far as golf, spa, water park, every other food and beverage, you do have to be either a member or an actual registered guest that's staying here to be able to access any of our amenities.
And that makes it easier for that cashless process because you're just charging it back either to a credit card or to a folio. Correct. Yeah. Right.
And how do you do that? Do you have a card that you give them when they check in, or a wristband, or?
The room key is what is used for everything that they charge back to the room, which allows tracking for spend a little bit better as well. There are our guests, especially being when we have our 3 and 4 bedrooms or condos or the 11-bedroom houses, you're going to have, multi-generational or, friends and family that are coming staying. So, we would take a credit card, but the point is always try to do as little cash credit card type interactions. Everything we do is putting into the folio. Again, it just allows for better tracking, and that we were able to see how's the ancillary going with each guest as well.
So just a follow-up, Scott, on sort of how you evaluate technology and how you make sure they're all integrated and implemented properly. Are you part of that process, or do you have an IT team that leads that, or is there a sort of a small group that you guys put together to evaluate it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mix of our leadership team, our executive committee. We do have an IT on site that is definitely a huge part in when we get to the implementation, but it's definitely a joint decision. We're actually in the process now of looking at our tech deck and seeing, what the upgrades are that are out there for the existing systems we have, and making sure that they all work with the proper, our director of food and beverage, that it's going to work with everything at the water park, that they can move around and they're not tied to the actual POS terminal. And can do mobile. Same with golf, that tea time is not just booked through golf, but that we can do it through our reservations team here, and everything else along the way too.
Yeah. So part of bringing all that data and those systems together is, to make the guest experience more seamless across the property, as you mentioned. But also, I would imagine on the back end, in your role as sort of reporting and looking at the performance of all those different metrics. Which reports are most important to you and your colleagues, and who are the various stakeholders who are interested in that information, Scott?
Yeah, biggest ones that we use pretty much every day is going to be our 14 and 45-day forecast reports that are coming out. Obviously, scheduling is very important when we look at how is occupancy and what's coming in. So those are used pretty much within the entire leadership team. Our daily rooms pace and our golf pace. Obviously, golf is going to be very heavily relied as our golf team, but rooms pace just for, again, the sales and the operations team, just to see what's booking and when. And I go through those every day, but those are our biggest key reports that we utilize every day and really kind of do a deep dive into them.
And that then brings in the question of scheduling when you're talking about on the books and things, because you are an all enclosed resort, your food and beverage departments are and spa are dependent on the bodies that are in the resort, right? So that's also going to be something that you're going to focus in on, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got to make sure based on what's in there, and kind of going to what we talked about earlier. The 45-day was kind of more our guidance as far as scheduling everything else. Now it's pay attention to the 14-day, but look at it every day, because that's changing so much as those booking windows have become shorter. So as we're scheduling a week out, don't schedule based on the 45-day if you're sitting at 50%, where within the 14-day, now you're at 80%, and it's going to change dramatically.
Right. And then also the mix of guests, right? Between the group versus the transient, or the type of group, right? Like you mentioned earlier, the golf
Exactly.
group that might all be going into the restaurant first thing in the morning, versus a group that already has a banquet space reserved, right? So that mix
100%.
is very important to be able to distinguish for your different department heads, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we've got buyout group that has everything done through banquets, we're not going to staff all the outlets if really the only ones that can use it at that point are going to be, the members that are here. So it definitely, we can't just look at that. And even, the other parts that we look at too that really kind of don't show in the reports, but what we know is because of that member component, if we're at 100% occupancy, our membership director has always said, well, we're actually at 200% occupancy because we know all the members are going to be here when we look at the holidays. So, we can't just schedule accordingly to just what is our paid occupancy, but knowing that we do have an entire operation around here that has other components to it that aren't just based on paid rooms.
Yep.
Scott, for a hotel or a resort who's not as on top of it as you guys, shed a little light on, when you say you go through that daily and, your operations team needs to see this to make, labor decisions. How are you actually doing that? How is it manual reporting? Are you doing it in Excel? Are you pulling things together from different systems and then emailing them to the key stakeholders, or give us a little bit of behind the scenes there?
Yeah, it's the next very thing. We do a lot of ad hoc reports. We do a lot of manual Excel reports, but for the most part, everything we do is coming straight from DataVision. And those emails are being automated. We get them each morning. We're sending them out. And if we need to make any changes to those, we send those to the team based on what they're looking for.
Awesome. That's helpful.
Along the tech stack discussion, how do you handle pricing for different revenue streams? So we obviously know that we rooms has always been a fluctuation, right? We're always going to dynamically price those based on demand, based on all the different factors, right? But then when we talk about golf and we talk about spa and then even food and beverage, how involved are you in working with the team on pricing those different streams?
At this point, we're really kind of static when it comes to our golf, our spa, and our food and beverage pricing. We don't do a lot of dynamic in there. We're actually currently in the process of looking at a tool for dynamic pricing when it comes to golf, because there's definitely some opportunities when it comes into there. Really, the only other department that I kind of get involved with a little bit, and it's going to be more your occupancy and demand driven, is going to be our recreation. So when we look at our beach cabanas and our cabanas at the water park, simple supply and demand based on those, we do put demand pricing into those. But other than that, it's strictly just going to be using our RMS to price our rooms to go through those. Otherwise, it's for the most part, it's pretty static throughout the rest of the resort.
Do you feel like there's opportunities there for the spa and the recreation and the food and beverage to be able to do some dynamic pricing in there? I mean, I know that it's probably limited based on the current tech stack, right? So it's a little bit more challenging. You can do it, but you are limited because they can't do it. The current tech can't do it. Is that more what your limitation is?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely limited by what our current systems are. And that's why we're looking to try to get these upgrades in place that would allow more of that dynamic pricing to be involved within all the different outlets. Because, right now it'd be an extremely manual process that, could go south real quick if not done correctly. Yeah,
absolutely. You don't want to push people out because the price is too high when there's no demand.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's break that down a little bit further. I'm curious about dynamic pricing in those different outlets. So, I mean, at a very basic level, I'm sure you do happy hour, right? Happy hour is could be a basic revenue management dynamic pricing, right? You're discounting for a certain time of day. I mean, another thing you can do in F&B, I'm sure you guys have explored, is if you get a cocktail on the beach and a cocktail waitress has to bring it to you, that's one price, versus if you sell it at the bar in the restaurant, that's another price. That's another form of sort of dynamic pricing in F&B. And there are a ton of other opportunities you could do. And then in the golf, right? Like, I'm sure you do at least seasonally, right? There's peak seasons that you've got the rates for. Do you go as far as weekday yet, or is it like different price on Sunday versus on Tuesday?
No, it is, and we have two signature golf courses here. We've got our ocean course, and we've got our conservatory course, which is more inland, more of a link style. That's our signature Watson course, where our ocean course is our signature Nicholas course. Yeah, there's definitely the seasonality within there. Weekday, weekend, morning versus afternoon.
Yep.
Again, there's a heavy member play component that comes into it, so that definitely plays a huge part in our T sheet. But that's where we're looking at. There's definitely a lot of opportunity, within each hour of what can be done on there outside of just the flat seasonality when it comes to how we are currently producing.
What about in the spa, Mark? What are some of those dynamic pricing best practices you see some of our other customers doing in the spa?
Well, definitely taking into account the time of day, right? Saturday mornings at 10 is generally going to be a lot busier than Tuesday afternoon at 3. And so looking at those times with the data that we can provide to the customer to be able to see what times of day are the busiest, what treatments are consumed more during those busy times, to be able to look at a pricing model that makes sense for those. And so what Scott's talking about there is the limitation is been the defining factor across the industry of being able to adopt dynamic pricing in the spa. So when we talk about the numbers that we can provide, sure, we can show where those are, but then to be able to act on that within their source system to be able to make those changes is very difficult.
So let me switch gears a little bit, Scott, and talk about sort of the idea of adoption, right? You've got a lot of systems. You're centralizing a lot of that data with IntelliSight, formerly known as Data Vision, and you're in there a lot looking at those reports. How do you get the department heads or your colleagues or the people that you're working with to buy in and sort of adopt this idea of using data to make smarter decisions?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've always said is for the most part, data is the truth. You can't really change it once it's there and everything else. So understanding that the data is, or should be true, but also knowing that there could be anomalies or something that's in there that may be impacting how those numbers are. So we always do the whole trust but verify. So as we look at anything else when we're pulling data, is why is something there or not there? And it could be something like a hurricane. That when we look at business mix, it could be this year we had snow in Northeast Florida. Was an outlet closed? Was a golf course down for more aeration, overseeding? There's different parts that come into it. So understanding what data we have and going through all of that is definitely a huge component with all the departments to make sure that they're looking at their data and going through it all, and not just relying on an actual report that's being sent to them, but doing a true deep dive, data mining and getting into the actual, what is this data? Where does it come from? And really working through all of that.
And that brings up an interesting question, Scott. I guess the question is, how do you get those team members, those division leaders, to buy into the deep dive that you might be able to do with one software versus another? Or do they even know you're just providing that deep dive capability and they're just consuming of the data? So the question is,
ask you when they need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have kind of our one system through you all that we use for everything, and we've all known and used it since the resort opened. So it's
Yep.
kind of our tried and true. This is what we go through.
Okay.
We're all very familiar with it. There's a few of us that are kind of the masterminds and master users of all of this for it. So understanding that, so it's really not hard to get that buy-in because we have so much that's in there. It's we're not using something that's only got a year or 2 years history. We can go back and look 20 years back and pull trends and see, what happened from, the financial crisis in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, and then what happened, with COVID. And, there's so many other ups and downs that we can look at. I asked the question at the Hotel Data Conference, when are we going to stop using 2019 as a benchmark after they realized that 2019 was an anomaly? That was something that they realized after they went back 30, 40 years that it kind of was a blip. And we've all been looking at that. So, what year do you really look at? Well, do you go back to 2017, 2016? Well, okay, well, now you're getting closer to, they look at that 6-year, 7-year cycle after the financial crisis. So, understanding your property, and again, we've got the benefit of having so many years on there that it's made it easy for us to really not have to be a hard sell for everyone to understand what we've got out there to buy into that data.
Excellent.
Scott, I'm going to throw one more at you that apologies, was not on the list, but I just thought of it. I don't know how you can have a conversation about business intelligence without talking about artificial intelligence. And my bad for not putting it on the list, but just curious your thoughts around how you're using AI today, if you are, and sort of, do you see any potential or opportunity to sort of do a lot of the things that we're doing today more efficiently?
Absolutely. AI is going to be huge. And I think it's something that we're still very much learning, but AI is also still learning. So again, I go to the whole trust but verify. Again, they kind of used AI at the hotel data conference of, put something in chat GPT, tell me what this is. And then after they went and verified everything else, all the numbers were wrong. So you still have to teach the AI. It needs to understand it as much as we're learning from it. We're using an RMS that's 100% AI based on data that's going into it and using those kind of calculations and formulas in the background. But there's a lot more that can be said and done. We use it to see, what is the demand? Where are people coming to Florida? What are people going to the beach for? Where are they coming from? Who's searching these different things? We added 4 pickleball courts in the last several years. That was something that was huge. What's changing from tennis to pickleball? Are people leaving golf that are going to it? There's so many things that we can ask and learn from it to make ourselves better hoteliers and learn from.
And that brings up an interesting point about ChatGPT specifically. I was just speaking last week. Jason and I were both speaking with a gentleman that went through his doctorate in hospitality, and one of the things he had to learn to add to a question was, and don't make stuff up. At the end of the question, because apparently it's a big thing where it will just make up stuff, make up numbers to fill in wherever it doesn't know the answer. And so you have to filter those questions, like you said, trust but verify, right?
Right. And AI's whole thing is how quick can I get this, not how accurate.
Right. Yeah. And when we're talking about rates and demands and things like that, we have to be accurate. We can't just be quick about it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. That was an awesome conversation. I think what we need to do for our audience is try to pull out a few key takeaways from the conversation that we just had. Maybe what I'll do here is, Mark and Scott, ask you just, I've got a couple topics here that we can hit on as key takeaways, and I'll ask you just a short, brief, one thing that our audience should know. And let's start with centralizing your data. Scott, something that our audience should know about the benefits of centralizing your data.
Yeah, a huge benefit for us is making sure everything communicates. Having a bunch of different programs out there that don't communicate to each other is going to put a huge wrench in things that you're going to end up missing something, or it's going to be wrong. So make sure that your tech deck works in hand with each other.
Mark, after 20 years of helping hoteliers centralize their data, what's one key takeaway for them?
Well, we hit on it about the tech stack, making sure the tech stack can grow with your needs, right? And Scott hit on that about the capabilities of doing dynamic pricing. He wants to. There's the need for it, but he can't just make a system that has never done it do it.
All right, next topic, key takeaway for getting a culture of data-driven decisions. How do you get buy-in? We touched on this a little bit. What would be your one takeaway, Scott?
I think, understanding your data, but then also going to it after the fact and make sure that what you had, did actualize and performed exactly what you were looking for, and as it was expected. So if it was true and it was verified, then you've done a good job of making sure your data is working for you.
Coming back to that forecast accuracy piece is really what you're talking about, right? Making sure that when you do say that there's going to be 10,000 room nights in transient business versus 30,000 room nights in group for the month, you want to make sure that you're actually saying, you're speaking the truth, right? You're speaking what you know is going to happen, and then be able to go back and look at it again after the fact. Yeah, great point.
Awesome. I think that was a great conversation. I appreciate both of you guys. A quick little bit about Hoteliers IntelliSite, our modern business intelligence platform. As Mark and Scott mentioned, bringing over 400 integrations, bringing your data together in a central location to unlock a 360-degree view of your business. And if you have any follow-up questions, You can reach out to myself or Mark, or you can find all of our information at hotelier.io. Scott, Mark, really appreciate you guys being with us today.
Thank you,
Pleasure's
Jason.
mine.